couple of examples of superficial answers to various types of questions in job interviews. And of course, this is targeted for training purposes. Like the main reason I'm doing this is to help you to understand that, hey, this no longer flies in 2020, or this is not the best way you want to do things. And I'm going to start with a milestone here rather than a question. So right when you open the conversation, especially for a phone conversation, don't just answer with hi. Don't just say hi. Introduce yourself. Or find some other formula. I have other videos on this channel explaining this, but if you just answer with hi, you're going to come across as superficial from day one, if you want, of this exchange. So the introduction, the rapport building process must be something you must take seriously. So this would be the first thing you want to keep in mind. The second area I want to touch upon is rather generic answers. So, for example, I think it was yesterday that I read a book about excellent phrases in job interviews, and they were advertising, various types of answers to various types of questions. And one of these was, "What's your weakness?" And basically, since the book was written, I believe, in around 10 years ago or so, they were saying, so with the weakness, you cannot go wrong with saying something that I work too much. In my opinion, for today's environment, for a contemporary answer to "what's your weakness" is not going to fly for "I work too much." I believe that's a bit cliche. That's, in my opinion, that's very generic. So instead, try to find your true weakness, going to the specific role that you're applying for. And to give you some pointers here, although I have plenty of other videos on this channel to give you tens, if not hundreds of examples of weaknesses, is that you should pick the opposite behavior of what you do really good. So for example, if you're a salesperson, you could always pitch technology as not being your core strength. However, you have a great team with whom you communicate and you take advantage of them whenever the technology skills are required. So this is how you go about a weakness in 2020. Another example of a superficial, of a generic answer in this context is the answer to "why do you want to work for this company?" So imagine yourself, you're an interviewer, and you basically interview 1,000 people a day for, let's say, for phone screening rounds, and basically there you ask each and every one, "Hey, but why do you want to work for this company?" And imagine yourself hearing this answer over and over again. "I love the culture that you have there, and I'm a top-notch performer." This actually happens quite a lot. People do come with these types of generic answers. So you want to avoid such an approach. You want to really, of course, you can focus on the culture of the company, but you could be a little bit more specific. Or if you believe that the culture is not the main attraction point, you could mention it if you find it relevant at all, and then focus on how can you differentiate going into this job. What's your main differentiator? And even further, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What's in for you from all this experience? Make it more interesting, make it more tailored, more customized for the experience. Because again, if you put yourself in your interviewer's shoes, you'll find out that you quickly get bored about these types of answers. Next indicator of a superficial answer in a job interview is answers that are too short. So as a general idea, I found that answers around 2 minutes seem to be the right length in generally speaking. Now, it's not a mistake if you every now and then give a more concise answer, especially for follow-up questions where they ask you, "Okay, but how profitable was your business?" You could explain that you had a profit of this much for the last. You could explain the profit, for the past 4 quarters, and it would take you 15 seconds, and you're done. That's fine. There's no problem with that. The problem is when you have a very reactive approach to any question they ask you. You give the most concise possible answer, usually around 1 minute or 30 seconds to 1 minute. This might not come across as you being super professional, simply because you compress too much the conversation, you make it a bit reactive. So this is not starting a dialogue, by the way. Now, how can you fix this? Well, you can fix this by, in my opinion, the best fix for this is to closely watch your interviewer. Because usually, you know, when you're going into the wrong direction, your interviewer will give you clues over whether they're happy or not with your answer, or they will also give you clues on what they were actually expecting from you. So if you feel that your interviewer is, if while you speak or immediately after finishing your answer, you feel that the interviewer is not really convinced about this, you could follow up. Hey, maybe I could develop a bit more on this aspect, or does this answer your question? What can I do to fully qualify your answer? And there are interviewers who prefer 10 minutes answers for job interviews, although they will tell you this in the beginning if that's their preferences. But the idea is that if you go too short on your answers in a behavioral interview, and especially if you're for a more junior non-sales roles, that will be perceived as superficial in an interview. And last but not least, the last point I want to touch upon here is general statements. So, for example, if I would ask you, tell me about the time when you failed, and you're a recent graduate, and you say, well, yes, everyone has failures in their career, and me as a recent graduate, I'm no exception for that. However, the types of failures I had in my career are maybe not as significant. So the first one that comes to mind is a project that I failed 2 years ago. It was a side project in which I worked with my colleagues, and it was to develop a artificial intelligence algorithm to determine, to count the number of people in a picture. So I learned quite a few lessons from that mistake. Since I was a bit late, I could have worked a little bit harder. And anyway, we in the end we did the project, although we extended the deadline, but we still managed to complete the project on time. Not on time, but we still managed to complete the project. So it was useful for the purpose that we built it. Now, notice here, that although it's a failure story and it follows the STAR format in a way, it's still a rather general statement. It doesn't emphasize on me being a learner. Even if I talked about the learnings in my failures, it doesn't emphasize that it's a convincing failure story. Why am I saying this? Well, for example, if I would have added a couple of numbers here, like we had a 2 months deadline, and after 2 months our algorithm was having only this level of accuracy, when in fact we were targeting a level of 95% accuracy, and we only got to 92% accuracy. So we went back to work, we sit together with my colleagues, and we eventually determined that we must redo the algorithm, and we spent another 1 month in order to redo the algorithm. We used a large database of pictures we would want to run A/B testing on. We ran it over 100,000 pictures, and we closely kept in touch with our supervisor, or our teacher, or our contractor, or whatever that was. And in the end, we managed to obtain 96.3 accuracy rate. And in spite of the delay, we managed to do it completely. So notice here, how am I introducing a couple of quantifiers to give a bit of context of what actually happened in that project. And also in the opening statement, the situation, it's not as if it is not relevant to say for you as a recent graduate that I perhaps didn't have as many mistakes as other people. No, everyone has mistakes. The idea is that you focus on specifically your mistake, you quantify it, you are to the point, and you follow the key elements, the key ideas that you want to transmit. So these would be a couple of examples when it comes to superficial answers in a job interview. Hopefully you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.